Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan is here. Yeah, man. Tomorrow night, I'm off. Saturday, I'm over hosting Coast to Coast AM. Sunday, I am sleeping and doing yard work. Next week, we kick off another week here on Fade to Black. Tonight, it is Richard Dolan. A special night tonight. Normally, this is Fader Night, open lines. But we've got Richard here. Got a lot to talk about. He is one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs and believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. He completed his graduate work at the University of Rochester, where he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, European history, and international diplomacy. Before that, he studied at the Alfred University and Oxford University and was a finalist for Rhodes Scholarship. I will never get tired of saying that. He is the author of UFOs and the National Security State. He co-authored with Bryce Zabel, AD After Disclosure, and his latest book, of course, is UFOs and the 21st Century Mind. He hosts his own radio show, The Richard Dolan Show. He's got his live YouTube live stream that he does now each week with his wife. And in addition to everything else, he owns Richard Dolan Press, actively publishing books by authors from all around the world on all kinds of subjects. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the latest news about the United States Navy adopting, allegedly, new reporting procedures for UFOs and UAPs and other UFO news. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Richard, good evening.
Hi, Jimmy. How am I coming in? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. Loud and clear.
Very good.
Why would you ask me that? Did you lose the internet today?
No, I didn't know, but I've got this nice little microphone hooked up to my computer, and when I connected with you just before we went on, I said, "Hey, can you hear me?" And you were like, I didn't hear any answer from you.
I was doing other stuff, man. I was doing other stuff. I was drinking coffee, Richard. I was paying no attention to you.
That sounds like my world. I don't like to listen to people these days.
Did you ever?
Not always. No.
Oh, that's a good answer, man. That's a good answer. Okay, look, last song you listened to today.
I knew you were going to ask me this, and I had to ask my wife, Tracy. And she remembered, and it was by The Cure. How about that?
You went The Cure today. Oh.
Yeah, they were good.
Which one?
Pictures of You.
Oh, man. Strong.
That's a good song, right?
Oh, man. I like all things The Cure. I was watching them last week. I was watching the replay of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? And they played. And I don't know if they did Pictures of You. Boys Don't Cry. I think they did.
Oh, so did they get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, they played. Okay. I caught that part of the show. They should be there if they're not. But they sounded great, man. They sounded great. They sounded really
wonderful.
Great band.
So that they get the nod for this show.
Yeah, there you go. My last song today, I talked about it in the intro. Link Ray, Rumble. I cranked that in the bunker today. Oh, it's just such a good song.
Whenever I see you, you'll have to play that one for me. I'm not sure if I know that.
Yeah, you do. Pulp Fiction.
Oh.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction. Rang, gang, gang.
Yes, indeed. It takes me back.
Oh, man, Link Ray. Just amazing. So we're in the midst of these crazy times, and it seems that, Richard, every time you're on this show, even when we're hanging out, somewhere around the country, we're hanging out, it seems that we just sit down and talk about the crazy stuff that is going on, and it's been unrelenting the last 5-6 years. It's been in a no let up mode.
Well, it's UFOs and it's every other part of the world.
That's right.
So it's not just UFOs.
It's not.
Because we're on social media.
Right.
Facebook is out of control. Twitter. I mean, there's so much happening every single day, everywhere, that I believe people are getting worked up in every field of endeavor. Certainly UFOs are no exception. But I don't think that it's unique in the field. No,
it's not. And today, this is what we're going to get to the United States Navy in a bit. But One of the things that you embrace is social media, and you and I, let's talk. We always talk about our private conversations. You and I, let's go back like 5 years. I remember you and I having a long conversation one day on advertising on the net, on what YouTube could be, how to deal with Twitter. You hadn't gone back to your Twitter account. You wanted to, and you were asking me how, and we had a very long conversation that afternoon about what social media could be, right? Yeah. And your interest has been there all the way through.
So I had very limited social media skills. I'll just say that.
But your interest, you know the importance of it.
Yes.
And here we are today. Would you have ever guessed that these companies that we help support, believe it or not, it's not YouTube supporting us. It's the content. The content providers are the ones that keep those companies going. It's not the other way around. But they are treating us like we owe them something.
YouTube has, and Facebook also, they've become the ultimate finger-wagging school marm, the moralistic, holier-than-thou, protect-you-from-yourself person that everyone hates. Like, everyone hates that kind of person.
Right.
Like, remember Church Lady? Dana Carvey did that on SNL?
Yep.
That's what YouTube is.
Yep.
So, like, they're now Church Lady, and Facebook is Church Lady, which just banned, the whole InfoWars crowd, Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson.
Yep. Louis Farrakhan, Laura Loomer.
Exactly. But Facebook is out of control with protect you from yourself, which, by the way, they're completely advised by neocon groups like the Atlantic Council and other very nefarious, very pro-war, very empire-type groups, Russia-phobic. So that's Facebook. That's their universe. And YouTube is every bit as bad, frankly. Every time I do a YouTube show, I don't know. Am I going to get dinged? Am I going to get brought into the YouTube principal's office this time? Like every time I create anything for YouTube, they've got their automatic algorithms that decide, is this good or bad? Oh, this is bad. Let's demonetize him. Let's ding him. I'm expecting one day, like, they're going to just yank me altogether.
Well, they did that to us last week.
I didn't know that.
They did.
What did you do?
I did nothing.
Of course.
I did absolutely nothing. I literally logged in to YouTube, and I saw that my monetization was gone on all of my videos. And I thought, oh, that's strange. Let me refresh my page. Maybe those just, didn't load in. And it was there. And I clicked on my channel note, and it said, your channel has been demonetized.
The entire channel? Or
the entire channel. And it said, it was brief. It said, due to our regular auditing process, your channel, the majority of your channel's content is in violation of our standards. That's what it said.
Standards.
No, not community. I've had no community. I've had no community strikes, no copy, nothing like that. And I've been with them for 10 years.
So have you figured this out?
Yeah, we got it back after we did a formal complaint through a legal process.
The king in front of the Pope back in the 11th century.
Yep, and they ended up giving us the channel back. It took about a week, but they threatened us. They threatened us in this email that any further violations would be termination of the channel.
Did you find out what your violation was?
No, they never told us anything.
Oh.
Anything. It was the craziest. I mean, not a strike, not a warning, nothing.
Are you familiar with the writer Franz Kafka?
Yes, I am, of course.
So this is very Kafka-esque.
It's very Kafka-esque.
If anyone hasn't read Process, The Trial, great book, kind of creepy, very brilliant. And the character in the trial is arrested, but he never gets charges. Like, he doesn't know what's the problem, and he's got to go to trial, and he has no idea what the process is. He keeps trying to find out, and he goes through this bureaucracy. that gives him no answers and just gets crazier and crazier. This is 100 years ago when Kafka wrote this book. And YouTube is like that. They give no, because they're so big and everything is done by their algorithms. They actually, every bureaucracy is designed so that no one can ever take responsibility for anything. Like literally, I think that's the purpose of it. So they don't want to take responsibility individually. They just have their rules in place. There are no reasons given anymore, at least officially. So I'm sorry that happened to you, and now you're living on the tightrope.
No, well, yeah, YouTube was never, and you and I had this conversation 5 years ago, that YouTube is just a small slice of what we do. Right? We've got all kinds of things going around, and our main focus is the live radio show first. Everything else organically happens after that. YouTube was only an archiving post for us to go and archive the shows.
But the reality is it's so big. Like it really can't be ignored.
It can't be. We have 100,000 subs, And
by the way, I would just say to listeners who think, oh, boo-hoo, you got demonetized. Why is it about the money? I would just say this. Try writing a book and then have someone say, oh, you're not allowed to make money off of your book.
No, or worse than that.
It's the exact same principle.
Worse than that. You write a book, and then somebody else takes your book, makes a copy of it, and starts selling it and monetizing it.
Oh, yeah. That happens too.
But right?
I'm just talking about YouTube's arbitrary rules to prevent creators of content who work very hard for what they do. I just put up a video today. It just killed me. I'm not a video editor at all. Like I spent hours on this for something that looks like totally mediocre, to be honest. But I put it out there, and I'm always in danger of YouTube just smacking me down and just taking these things away from me.
Yeah, and you have to be conscious of that. And the other part, but see, this is when you talk about monetizing, when people come back and you get your monetization pulled away, and you say something about it, and somebody wants to make a comment about it. Well, what the bigger picture for me is that YouTube will not do anything about other people. You have to go and chase down anybody that is ripping you off. Number one. Number two. The viewers on YouTube go and watch all of this pirated, monetized material, but they don't say anything to the pirate channels. Nobody's, they're okay with that, but the creators of the content, heaven forbid they should monetize. It's like, man, I just don't get it anymore. I don't.
Well, it's getting worse and worse. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I believe this will actually have some relevance toward our topic relating to the Navy. Believe it or not.
It does. It's all connected.
I'll bring it in. I'll rope it in. But we are moving into an era now where YouTube isn't just YouTube. YouTube is Google. Google is Alphabet. And Google and Facebook, and they are now part of the big media. Like, we used to talk about Fox and CNN and NBC and CBS and all of that. Well, add in Facebook and add in YouTube, Google, because their media power is every bit as much, if not more. And they make as much money, if not more, than some of those big media operations. So what we're seeing is a major consolidation and centralization of the power and the algorithms that YouTube has. Do yourself a favor, and anyone listening, try to do a YouTube search on anything you want, really, like UFO. Type in UFO into your YouTube search, and what you're going to get is a search dominated by CNN, Fox, and NBC, BBC, CBC, like all the major establishments, all the major corporations. And it's just shocking to me every time I see it. So they rig the game. They have what I would say is a very dishonest algorithm. So all of the results are rigged in favor of large establishment corporations that are, they get the little green checkbox.
So I just punched in UFO, and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pictures of Luis Elizondo on Fox.
Yeah, exactly. All Fox and CNN.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a completely rigged game. And that's the only way they can win is by cheating. See? So there's like all of these independent voices out there like you, like me, and there's a lot of other people. And we have something to say that's very different from what you're ever going to hear on the establishment TV.
Right.
And yet you people have to really hunt. They've got to go pages down to find alternative voices. I mean, if you're going to do that for YouTube, why not just turn on your TV, for God's sake? Why even bother with YouTube? Just turn on your television, put on NBC, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really what they've gone to.
Mm-hmm.
So they've actually turned YouTube. They're doing it as much as possible to turn it back into like TV of the 1980s. And this is what rolling back 20 plus years of internet freedom now looks like. And we're not done with that. So what we're seeing with all of this YouTube problems and getting dinged and being brought to the principal's office for every little imagined infraction that the finger-wagging schoolmarm says you made, it's only going to get worse. So because it's not just economic control, there's definitely ideological, political control going on here. And it will relate, I am convinced now, to the whole rollout of whatever kind of disclosure we're going to be looking at down the road. And I think that we are moving toward a disclosure moment in the UFO field. I didn't necessarily believe that even 5 years ago, but I think it's true now. But the question is, what will it be like? And I am increasingly convinced that we're looking at what I now call controlled disclosure. So it's a very highly spun version of disclosure in which the UFO subject's been basically rebranded as UAP, and all the history, all of the drama, all of the baggage, the cultural connections to UFO are being siphoned out. And now we're going to UAP, and you have folks like Luis Elizondo. And I actually have nothing personal against him, but folks like Elizondo and a lot of these other people who are getting a lot of media time are going on to this pretense, this fiction, that, oh, well, we don't know what these things are. To which I'm going to call BS. I don't think that they believe that, and it's certainly not true. And we know that there are individuals and groups within the classified world who know full well that that's not the case. They know that there is a phenomenon that they have not been able to cope with for over 70 years. And it's not Russian and it's not Chinese, you know. They're rebranding this in order to, I think, defang the UFO term, frankly.
Let me ask you this, even though this is your answer is going to be your opinion, but a guy like Luis Elizondo, what does he really know? What does he actually really know?
Well, I'll bet he knows quite a bit.
I say the opposite. I'm going the opposite. I think he knows nothing.
Close to Robert Bigelow. So anyone who's close to Robert Bigelow probably knows a lot, realistically. Okay.
I still say he knows pretty close to nothing. And the reason that the real players that have these answers to ET and UFO and off-planet life are so far above his pay grade. He's not even getting crumbs. That's my opinion.
It's all relative.
Bigelow, I think Bigelow. Well, I think Bigelow. Again, this is my opinion, but I think Bigelow has had very, very direct experiences where he knows about the ET presence because of his own experiences, right. and that's what I base mine on, is my own experiences. I've had a couple with you that are pretty strange. Well, I understand that, but
he's had experiences. Plus, he's a billionaire, and he's been obsessed, as very few people in this world are, with diving into the subject and doing everything he can to learn about it. And he's got resources to throw into it. So, he ran NIDS for years, and he, presided over the Skinwalker Ranch, as everyone knows, and was connected with getting MUFON's reports. I mean, this is a man who has been in a position that almost no one, maybe literally no one else, has been in over the last 25, 30 years to have access to some of the information he's gotten. Yeah, and Elizondo, is close to Bigelow.
But what I'm saying is, when Elizondo says he doesn't know what they are, I believe him.
Well, that's not true. He certainly has to know.
I don't know.
I'm going to defend him for this. Because these guys, Elizondo or any of the others who are associated with TTSA, they have to present this fiction to the world. to some extent, if they're going to get anyone to listen to them. If they want to get CNN or Fox to listen to them, they can't do what I do or what you do, because those organizations are so tightly controlled. There's no freedom in any of those major news organizations. So you have to go and create this fiction. This is why they've rebranded UFOs, in my view, and they're going straight up with UAP, because if you're going to have a public conversation about this subject, the last thing that those people want, and by those people I mean anyone in the hierarchy that's got sensitive access to this, they don't want to open up this whole can of worms on themselves. So they're trying to do this as delicately and as gently as they can. And my opinion is that they've decided the way that they're going to do this is by kind of reinventing the whole subject. So they're talking about UAP, and he's going under this pretense, oh, well, we don't know what they are. Of course he knows what they are. But in order to have that conversation with even members of Congress who, I mean, most of them are so far in the dark, they have no clue about any of this, right? They're like a kindergarten level. And most of the so-called educated world of ours, I'm talking about academia for sure, which is a very rigid structure, and certainly the media, they're at kindergarten level or less. So for someone like Elizondo, who clearly knows a lot, in my view, if you can imagine being in his position, how do you go about doing this? You've got to really slow things down for the mainstream and make this as non-dangerous as possible. So no talk about cover-up, God forbid. And they don't get into cover-up at all. They're like, why are they ignoring this subject? Elizondo's like, all I hear is the sound of crickets. Well, yeah, but there's also people above you who that's not the sound of crickets there. They're actually very well keyed in on this, and he clearly knows this, but they have to have this pretense. So that's my interpretation. What do you think?
Well, I have a very positive outlook on all things that are going on right now. The more talk, the more that the world is exposed to this conversation and questions get asked. I'm very appreciative of that. Very appreciative. What I don't believe, this is when we talk about facts, is that the UFO question is not going to be revealed on the History Channel any more than Bigfoot is. It's not going to play out that way. And for them to pull on the heartstrings of those out there that want these answers, and that it's going to come in a 6-part episode on History Channel, and we're going to show you that I think is wrong. But I'm glad that the show is airing because people will be talking about it. But we all know the ending of the show.
Well, I don't know how far they're going to go with it. I know nothing about the production of this. I mean, I've heard about it like you, but I don't know anything inside. And it's TV, and we've both been involved in TV, and it's very obvious there's only so far that any TV production is going to go. They're very limited. Having said that, what I think is happening is we're seeing, think about how much we have seen since December 2017. All right, since Politico, New York Times, and then the Washington Post. Very coordinated, by the way. All right, we're supposedly looking at an independent media, but obviously this is not very independent. It's very coordinated. They all work together to do their UFO coverage. And that really was a sea change in our culture. The further ahead now we go and we look back, I think we can see December 16th, 2017 as a truly major event. And in the sense that you have the ultimate voice of the establishment, that is the New York Times and the WAPO, I suppose, both stating that the UFO subject has been taken seriously by our Pentagon. That's huge. The New York, both of those have been so snarky and so dishonest about UFOs for so long, and then they come out with this. So something changed.
Well, let's pick up. Let's get to a break, and we will pick up right where we are leaving off right now. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan. We're talking about everything that's going on right now in the news. We're going to get to the U.S. Navy allegedly adopting reporting procedures for UFOs, now established as UAPs. We'll be right back after this short break. More with Richard Dolan after this. Stay with us. You're listening to a preview of Fade to Black. To get the full episode, go to jimmychurchradio.com and get our podcast. Click on the podcast banner or sign up in the membership area for downloadable MP3s. Everything commercial free. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Now, we're going to pick up right where we left off, and I know what went on during the break. Richard was thinking, and he wants to come back after the break and go, Jimmy, I was thinking during the break. Let me get this thought in. But before I let you get that thought in, Richard, I want to get this thought in because I was thinking during the break. Is that you made a couple of really good points about a monolithic monopoly of news and control of the media that we're dealing with today. Absolutely great point. And one of the things that we are also dealing with when it comes to UFOs now is that we are only getting one side of this story from TTSA and their PR firm to the media. All of the news releases that have come out on those top Google searches that I just did, each one of those was a TTSA thing, an Elizondo. And just like the United States Navy's press release this week, you get to the core of the article, you get to the bottom, and it's Elizondo and the History Channel and Chris Mellon and TTSA. And there you see where all of this information came from. Now we are into that danger zone. And when it comes out on Politico, this really needs to be brought out and spoken about. Comes out, it's a press release bought and paid for by TTSA. It goes to Politico. Politico guises it as news, and then CNN picks it up, and then Fox picks it up. Now it goes from a press release to news and fact base. Yeah, that is a danger zone.
That's exactly right. I think you've. So what we're seeing is TTSA has clearly developed close enough relationships with the in crowd, that is the major media.
Or their PR firm is taking advantage of these said relationships that have been built.
Right, exactly. I mean, a lot of it is the I'm sure the old boys network. I mean, these are well-connected people. Some of them are very well connected, and I think they had media connections to start with, so that very much helped. And what they have to say, I think what they are doing, what they're saying. You've got people like Chris Mellon, who you mentioned, and Luis Elizondo, and then there's Hal Puthoff, who I consider extremely important. What they are doing, I think it's clear, has been approved by someone important or some group that's important. So they're allowed to get that message out, and they are dominating all of the mainstream narratives on UFOs. There's no question. I think you nailed it.
It's a danger zone, and for those that in the community that are emotionally involved with this subject, it's why they are here. They've had a sighting, they've had dreams, contact, whatever it is that draws them into this quest for answers, right? They want something. And then this comes out as a press release, and it turns into news, and then it's pulling on their emotions when they don't have necessarily the time or whatever to read through the whole article and actually see really what is going on with it. They only read the top couple of paragraphs. Holy crap! The United States Navy is now it's got UFO reporting protocols, and they're talking to their pilots about this. Well, when that is not the case.
The only real news in that article, if one reads it carefully, because we don't even know what the guidelines are. The Navy
That's right.
is not releasing them. But there was some genuine news in that article, and which is that the Navy acknowledged that they have been briefing members of Congress and their staffers on UFOs. And this has...
No, not on UFOs. Not on UFOs. They've been briefing them on something. Now, see, this is the thing. When they're talking to members of Congress about threats, what are we actually talking about here? Is it Chinese and Russian drone technology spying on our military maneuvers? Is it hypersonic aircraft and missile systems? What is it that truly is the core of the matter here? Or if the Navy is talking to members of Congress about ET being here on this planet, that's a whole other situation, which is a big deal.
I haven't been privy to any of this information, so take it for what it's worth.
Right.
But I'm going to give you my strong opinion on this, which is that they're not telling Congress that ET is here. No, they're not doing that. But I do think that in addition to talking about whatever threats from other national drones, Russia, China, whatever, I'm sure that's in the mix. But look, TTSA has always been about the genuine UFO phenomenon. They don't use that phrase, but they absolutely, that's what they're about. And when the Navy is talking about this statement, I'm looking at the exact statement that the Navy gave to Politico, which, by the way, I think you're exactly right. Politico really did very little on this except act as an in-between, a go-between. I don't know how much genuine journalism they ever really do anyway. But the Navy's exact statement was, in response to requests for information from congressional members and staff, Navy officials have provided a series of briefings by senior naval intelligence officials, as well as aviators who reported hazards to aviation safety.
Mm-hmm.
I was earlier today, I was calling that weasel wording.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really, but it's also, I think, one should be able to read between the lines of a lot of the stuff. It seems to me that they are having these conversations on UAP, UFO, whatever you want to call them. There does seem to be some level of interest in, at least among some members of Congress, about this. And where it goes, I think it's a positive thing to a certain extent. Like, my opinion of these individuals in TTSA is I don't have any reason to think that they're not honorable and actually not genuinely interested in some moving forward with disclosure. But they're also people with their own agendas. And, you know, they can't just come out and say, it's real, they're here, people. They're not going to do that. So they're going to do this in the way that is responsible for them to do, so they don't get their head handed to them by the media, by the press.
But I think the press
they're allowed to do.
I think the press is waiting. It would be the biggest headline ever, just like when the New York Times ran with that story, and it blew up like it did because people want to know this news. I
disagree. I don't think the New York Times is ever interested in genuine journalism there, ever.
Well,
and they've done no follow up.
But okay,
maybe they have no follow up.
Well, maybe I said it wrong. CNN, Fox, BBC, Sky News, RT, Washington Post, New York Times, LA Times, London Times, every news organization in the world jumped on that story because they needed and when the time comes that headline is ET is here, they will all jump on it and they will all report it, just like they did.
Yes, that's true. They'll do that, but they're not like the New York Times could have done that 50 years ago.
Yes, they could have.
All right, and they didn't do it, and they could do it today, and they didn't do it today, and they could do it tomorrow, and they won't do it tomorrow. So, they don't go there for a reason. We have, you mentioned RT in that mix of predominantly Western news. That was interesting. But the whole Western news, we'll look at them for the moment, is utterly subservient to national security interests and financial interests of those of Western society. And so we had our RT conversation the last time I was on, I believe.
Yeah, we did.
But we live in a very controlled media world. It's very controlled. So the fact, I mean, I agree. Like the people at TTSA, they have their role to play, in my opinion, but theirs should not be the only role. What we desperately need is genuine independent journalists. When you do a YouTube search and you get only CNN and Fox and MSNBC, good God.
I know there's
right?
a problem with that. There's a big
need other voices.
And let me throw this out. I can't wait to hear your answer. Without TTSA and the UAP spin on the Politico article, without TTSA, the Politico article doesn't happen. There is no journalist over at Politico pursuing this subject. Without TTSA, there is no New York Times article. All of the information, all of the sources for those articles, all of it, not independent sources outside of the mix, all of those sources are TTSA sources.
That's right.
Every single one. And
so
that's a dangerous...
They can complain about TTSA, but look, they did this much. It's a significant thing. Now, they haven't gone farther. And I don't know if it's because they can't or they won't, but they haven't. They've gone as far as they've gone. And maybe they'll go farther still. But it's a very careful process. Like you can see, it's a very cautious step-by-step process that they're going through here.
Don't you think, I want to talk about the United States Navy here for a second, that, and putting the Politico article aside, or the TTA press release through Politico,
Sure.
putting that aside, that if the United States Navy really, genuinely, I mean, like it is being talked about, is dealing with a threat from ET, that it would be done in a different manner than the way that it is being dealt with right now. No matter how it is, whether it's top secret and we don't hear about it, or it's discussed at Congress or whatever in a more open manner, I don't care. But it's not through a History Channel TV show and a press release.
Well, think of it this way. All of this, even the Politico article, they're referencing the 2004 Tic Tac incident over and over again with the Nimitz off the coast of California. Now, that's a significant event, and it's a famous UFO event, and actually rightly so. But that's 15 years ago.
Why? Why wait 15 years?
The Navy is only now.
Yes. Why wait 15 years?
Guidelines, now that the whole rest of the world learned about the Tic Tac incident. I mean, clearly, you'd think it would have been important enough for them in 2004 when you have an object that's able to defeat the highly encrypted naval communications to arrive at the cap point where the F-18A Super Hornets were directed to go. It was there waiting for them. Only explanation I can see is that it was able to break through very classified Navy encrypted communications. Like, if I'm the Navy in 2004, I'm going to think, we got to have some.
We got problems, yeah.
Deal with it.
We got problems.
I can't think that they're going to wait 15 years after the whole thing comes out in the open before they have their conversation.
Why
so,
do?
Yes,
if I was in Congress, if I was a senator, if I was Trump, and I got news of this, the first thing I'm doing is bringing the head of the Navy, all of the admirals and rear admirals into Congress, sitting them down going, what do you mean you're talking about this now? What have you been doing for 15 years? If it's so important now, why didn't you do something back then? This is not cool. You are guilty here. You cannot say, hey, we're in it. Now it's a big deal, but right. Back that you can't stand on that. We need explanations out of you.
Yeah, they would, but
no, I'm saying no congressman's doing it. No senator is bringing up the obvious question: who's running the Navy?
Completely broken political system. I mean, you're talking about the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They're all broken. Like, seriously, what could Trump possibly do at this point? He's got half the Congress is talking about impeaching him and subpoenaing for this or that or whatever. Like, he's got his hands tied, right? Whether you like him or don't like him, it's very obvious this guy's totally been kneecapped. He's not going to be able to do a whole lot.
What about what about inside of the military itself? I'm a military brat, okay?
Right.
And I know how it is there. You take orders and you do your job, right? And that's it. That's the military. Well, if something like this went down, I could only imagine the first thing happening is the phone call to the captain of the Nimitz in that battle group, right? And getting some explanations going on that this was just, washed under the table for 15 years, and we've got these kind of threats flying around, and we're just now hearing about new protocols being written up. Where are the official reports that were written back then? We want to know exactly what happened.
Well, obviously, I think it's very obvious that the classified world, that's military and non-military classified world, has been dealing with this just fine all these years. And so, the stuff that the Navy is giving to Politico via TTSA, is that anything more than just public relations? I mean, I wouldn't think so. I would have to assume that the genuine reporting mechanisms. Look, we had JANAP 146, a series of guidelines that were in place back in the 1950s, for goodness sake. Like, we've always had very, very particular protocols in place to deal with the UFO phenomenon. That's always been the case. So it's not like, oh, golly, what are these things flying at Mach 3? We have no idea. Well, let's just forget about it, which is what Chris Mellon actually said in that Politico article, that it goes into basically a junk drawer, junk file, because there's no place for it. And I would seriously doubt that. The U.S. military has got a budget of over $700 billion. It is the largest military by far in the world. It's charged with defending national security. And you can't tell me credibly that there's no place in that massive amount of spending and that labyrinthian structure that there is not a program that is dealing with this. But it is highly classified because this is the most classified secret by far. This is a bigger secret probably than even 9/11, and that's big. Sorry, I just went there.
Yes, you did.
But with UFOs, I think nothing is bigger, and so for that reason, it has to have, secret or more secret than secret allows, and so it's very, very, very strict. So I don't know how they deal with it at the most secret levels, but it's clearly way beyond anything that we're hearing.
This article that references these new reporting protocols for the United States Navy about UFOs and UAPs. Okay, that is the slant. That's the spin that the article has on it. The Navy didn't say UFOs or UAPs in their press release. It is Politico and Elizondo and Mellon in this press release that said,
good point.
Right? Okay.
Right.
Do you think that these new protocols, even if they do exist, but I'm talking about if they do exist, the new ones,
right,
that they actually are focused on UFOs and UAPs, or it's in a generality and it's just if you see anything suspicious at all?
I think it's possible that it's genuinely UFO, UAP oriented. It could be like a reboot of Blue Book. I could see that happening. It would be rebooting Project Blue Book would be, in a sense, a step up toward, believe it or not, I could argue, toward disclosure, in the sense that you, once again, like we did in the 50s, have an official body within the government charged officially with looking into this. So I think that we're moving toward this openness. It is relative openness for one reason and one reason only, which is that I think it's obvious that this is a secret that is not going to stay buried forever. Like where disclosure has an expiration date, and I think we are moving toward it. And it has nothing to do with the desires of the political hierarchy. If they had their way, this would go for another 50 or 500 years. But they don't have full control over the situation. Our world is in a state of great flux. And yes, there are powers that be right now that are doing everything possible to double down on their control over the whole system. So YouTube, Google, Facebook, the whole thing. I mean, Facebook just banned, we talked about that, a whole bunch of other people today. Mm-hmm. It's becoming incredible. So, but with the other side of it is that there are still lots of people out there with a lot of ability to communicate. You know, try as you might, you can't completely nail down the internet. And so for that reason, I think it's seen as an inevitability that the UFO secret is going to come out. So the only question is, how will it come out? Under what conditions? So we're seeing a very, very dramatic shift in how UFOs are being portrayed. So it's not as a big joke as it was in the old days. Jokes about little green men and all that stuff. That's all gone. Mm-hmm. We're not seeing that. We're seeing a much more sober, serious discussion about UAP. And I think they're doing that as a way to control the narrative as much as possible. Because when the time comes and a general admission has to be made that this is real, I firmly believe now that the political hierarchy wants to do it in a way that to get rid of the whole stigma of a cover-up. They don't want this whole question of, well, what have you been doing with this information all these years? Mm-hmm. I don't know how successful they can possibly be. It seems to me a very difficult gambit, as it were, a very difficult thing to do, but maybe they think they can get away with it. And maybe they can, because dominating increasingly the internet and search engine results and with algorithms and so forth. So maybe they just think that they're going to be able to spin disclosure sufficiently so that they can, follow the CYA rule, not get in trouble, and do disclosure on their terms.
And I feel that when I come back after the break, which we're going to do in 45 seconds, I'm going to tell you the brief story that one of our neighbor's kids told me last week about his sighting when he was 14 years old. And when I share that with you, because this was at a military base, it's absolutely nuts. And this is not a UFO person. This was just a conversation. Yeah. But the danger that we have in this monopoly is TTSA controlling this narrative from one side. And we need to be very, 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 very careful here. And I'm thinking about the community, Richard. That's all. I'm thinking about the community.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I feel I'm a little more gentle on them, I think, than you are. I think I understand where they're coming from. But I agree with you. They can't be the only voice here.
They can't. And the media, I mean, anytime a UFO story breaks, is it that they're going to pick up the phone and call Elizondo for a quote? That's... Well,
they're not the only voice, though. There's still, this community, an alternative community out there, but it is true. There's the establishment. There's the controlled media.
Yeah. And, ask anybody across the country outside of our UFO community about UFOs. They're probably going to bring up Elizondo because that's the only face that they see on the media right now. So let's take a break right here. Let's get this in. Our guest tonight is Richard Dolan. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We've got a lot to talk about. When I come back, I am going to tell that story that my neighbor shared with me last week. It's pretty incredible. Richard, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do this. We'll be right back. You have just listened to a full hour free preview of Fade to Black. To get the full show, all archives, just go to our podcast section at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also sign up to be a Fadernaut in our membership area, where we have downloadable MP3s. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Go Bagley Tepe.